when they get here, promise me that you won't go over there and cause more problems. Sarah was worried her sister was going to make a bad situation even worse. If the police do their job and the music is turned off, there's no reason for me to go over, is there? Juliet mumbled with her fingers secretly crossed behind her back. And why were her fingers crossed? Because as soon as she saw the police drive up, she had every intention of going over there at the speed of a just-fired cruise missile. After all, she needed to make sure that her side of the story was heard and her complaint taken seriously. At that moment, the kettle on the stove began whistling. "Good. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this," Sarah said before disappearing into the kitchen. Sarah had no sooner left the room when Juliet saw the police cruiser drive up and park in the jerk's driveway. Rushing out the door, she reached the car just as two burly PEI police officers were getting out. "Hi, I'm the neighbor who called you about the noise." The music could still be heard going on at full force in the background. One of the officers checked his notebook. "You're Juliet Soma?" "Yes, sir, that's me." "Have you asked your neighbors to turn it down, ma'am?" "Yes, I did, and he refused. It's after 11, and I have every right to have this stopped now." She breathed an inward sigh of relief. Finally, somebody was going to do something about that creep. After his hot bath, Romeo had waddled downstairs and placing several pillows on the couch, he'd positioned himself carefully in the middle of them, relieving some of the pressure off of his sore back. Dressed only in his white terry towel bathrobe and with the alcohol he drank earlier to alleviate the pain still coursing through his system, he'd fallen asleep, even with the loud music on, which he was still playing to annoy Juliet. The doorbell rang, sounding insistent and breaking into his relaxation. Still groggy from sleep, Romeo slipped his feet into a pair of nearby flip-flop sandals. "I'm coming, hang on," he shouted. Had Tommy, Chase, and the girls forgotten their key? Shuffling to the front door, Romeo opened it to find two PEI police officers positioned there and a defiant Juliet standing behind them. His eyes wandered from one face to the other to finally rest on hers, and they narrowed dangerously. "You had to call them, didn't you? You just had to call the cops on me." Juliet threw him a haughty smile. "Maybe if you had shut down your party at a decent hour like most respectable, considerate, mature people, then I wouldn't have had to, you jerk." One of the officers, the shorter of the two, turned to her then. "Ma'am, please, we'll handle this," he instructed. He turned back to Romeo, and from his vantage point at the door, his eyes began to scour the insides of the house to determine if there were other people there. As police officers, they were trained to always be thinking ahead to what a normal, innocent, everyday situation could suddenly turn into. During his years on the force, he had seen many simple disputes turn into nastier situations in the blink of an eye, and personal safety was always on their minds. His eyes came to rest back on the man standing in front of him who had opened the door. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with a disheveled appearance, dressed in a white bathrobe, and his left eye was a deep shade of gray-black. It was practically swollen shut, possibly from having been punched. The officer's eyes again scanned the interior of the house beyond the homeowner, but there appeared to be no one else there.
"Sir, we've received a complaint about your music being played too loud," he stated flatly, then watched as the man in front of him turned to glare at Miss Soma standing behind them before his eyes came back to rest on the officers.
The officer continued. "City ordinance declares that excessive noise cease after 11 or else you can face a fine." The man gave them a tight smile. "I'm sorry, officer. I fell asleep on the couch and didn't realize what time it was. Of course, I'll turn it off immediately." He turned and walked gingerly, or so it appeared to the police, to the stereo system on the wall and shut the music off. Sudden silence permeated the house. "Thank you, sir. In the future, please remember that all loud noise must stop at 11 p.m., the taller officer detailed. "No problem, and it won't happen again. I'm always willing to do my civic duty." Romeo gave them a friendly smile. "Thank you, we appreciate that," the shorter of the officers intoned. Juliet's face suddenly dropped as she heard the pleasant, accommodating exchange between Romeo and the policeman. Everything, it seemed, was being resolved amicably.